Morning to all, my dear friends. Today we are moving on to the sixth session of Ashtanga Hridayam Suthrasthanam with the second part of Swastavritam. In the previous part, we discussed about the method of resisting diseases or the dinacharya, the practices, the daily routine practices, seasonal practices, something related to the prevention of diseases. Such details were discussed in the previous part. And in this part, we are moving on to the discussion on dietary practices in Ayurveda. Food, as we all know, is very important in prevention and cure of diseases. And body is made up of food. At the same time, food is a very potent cause for disease also. If the dietary practices are faulty, it brings out diseases. Ayurveda considers food as a master medicine, or otherwise it is called Mahabhaishajyam. Mahabhaishajyam means a master medicine. And the similar concept of food be thy medicine from Hippocrates was adopted by Ayurvedic masters. Food is equally preventive and curative. No need to explain much about that. While going to the dietary practices in Ayurveda, food itself is taken as medicine because you have to make some dietary changes, regulations according to the diseases, as we usually do in diabetes, lifestyle diseases and all. There, the food regulations are important. But in another perspective, in almost all the diseases, treatment part contains food items prepared by adding medicines, or food which is processed by adding medicines. Almost all the treatments in Ayurveda, if you go to Suthrasthanam, all the chapters or all the diseases are treated primarily with some modifications in preparing food by adding some medicines which are found to be curative in corresponding diseases. So in these two ways, food is important as a part of treatment. Here in Suthrasthanam, we have 4 chapters. One is Dravadravya Vijnaniyam, which describes the type and qualities of liquid type of foods, that is drinkables. And another chapter is Annaswarupam Vijnaniyam, means solid type of food items, edibles or eatables. And another chapter is about the food safety and security, that is Anna Samrakshaniyam. Samraksha means to be secure. And the 8th chapter, or the 4th chapter in this sequence, is about how quantity of food matters in health. That is called the Matra Asidiyam. Matra means quantity, Asidam means diet. So these 4 chapters are very important in the context of dietary practices. And in a way, some of these chapters like Dravadravya Vijnaniyam, Annaswarupa Vijnaniyam are found to be the biggest of the whole Ashtanga Hridayam, biggest chapters of the whole Ashtanga Hridayam, because that much explanations are there regarding the classification, items, food items. Any number of items are enlisted. They are described for their qualities. They are described for their activities in human body, or some restrictions on using such things and all. So it is a very elaborate, these 2 chapters are very elaborate. The only thing I can do here is to give an outline on those chapters, not going to the detailed description of each and every individual dietary ingredients. Another thing is, Ashtanga Hridayam was written 1500 years back, around 1500 years back. So the food items which are enlisted in Ashtanga Hridayam, we have to compare those items with the items available today in the market. So some of them may be outdated or extincted. Some new items may be there after the writing of this textbook, because especially during the invasion of foreigners to India, many items were imported. So such items may not be rightly mentioned in this description. So we have to be interpret. We have to interpret this knowledge with the contemporary availability and identity of food items. So there can be some contradictions on which was the real item mentioned in the textbook, or whether that is available now. How can you interpret the absence of such things now? Something, but majority of the items, as we can say, are available now in the market, because there is no drastic change or a complete change in the scenario regarding food items when compared with the scenario at the time where Ashtanga Hridaya was written. There is no that much drastic change or a bigger change. Minor changes are there. Minor imports are there. So we have to make such descriptions separately. What I am trying now is to stick on to the descriptions available in the textbook. So first will be Dravadravya Vijnaniyam, or drinkables or liquid food items. The description goes with the classification of items, then general nutrition values of each group, and qualities of individual consumable liquid materials, prohibitions and restrictions regarding specific food materials like curd and all. Curd and its related items, there are for example honey, curd, and even liquor. Such items have some restrictions, some sort of restrictions while using, and complications of unwholesome usage of some of the materials also are mentioned in this chapter. Going one by one, and there are mainly 7 groups mentioned in the chapter, and the first one is Jalavargam. Jalavargam means drinkable water itself, pure water. What are the varieties of water? What are pure? What is the characteristic of pure water and impure water? How can you collect pure water? Or I will explain it later. And second one is milk and milk products. That's called Kshira Vargam. Third one is sugarcane products, Ikshu Vargam. That is sugars, jaggeries and all. And next one is Madhuvargam. Madhuvargam is honey. Honey alone, or honey is not a single entity, because honey, the characteristic of honey changes according to the nature of honey bees. Honey bees, there are several species of honey bees or insects. So the honey available from different types of insects will have different characteristics. So there should be a group. Madhu is not a single entity, it's a group. And another group is Thaila Vargam, that is vegetable oils like sesame oil, mustard oil and all. And Madhya Vargam goes for alcoholic beverages, different types of Madhyam. And here it is Mutra Vargam. There is a spelling mistake. It is Mutra Vargam. Animal urines, these are not intended for food preparations, but often we use different types of mutra in preparing medicines. So this type of liquids are mentioned in this chapter. While describing on drinkable water, descriptions are there regarding what are the health effects of water. I'm not going into details. Pure rainwater, health issues of contaminated river water. River water, even the peculiarities or health effects of water differ in different geographical areas in which that river flows. Okay, so according to the geographical peculiarity of that area, the water will be having some sort of differences in their characteristics. So it will bring out some health problems also that are described. Those health problems also are discussed in that context. Coconut water, hot water, and restrictions on water intake. These details are available regarding drinkable water or Jalavargam. Regarding the milk and milk products or dairy products, general nutritional effects of milk are explained. And milk from different sources like cow, buffalo, human breast milk, camel, elephant, goat, etc. are explained. Even this camel, elephant milk characteristics are explained, but often they are not used as uh, food. They are used in preparation of medicine. Some medicines there is you can use, no doubt. There is no contradiction in using camel and elephant milk, but regularly we take goats and cows milk or buffalo milk. Human breast milk also, it's very important in its medicinal value also. Milk products such as curd, butter, buttermilk, ghee, etc. also are described in this context. In that context, curd is said to have some restrictions in use. You can use curd, but there are some restrictions. If you are interested to know the details about that, we will discuss it in another context, because describing all these things in this presentation will be difficult. And there are some restrictions, seasonal restrictions. For example, summer season is not good for intake of curd, and you have to ensure some additives while using curd. Direct use of curd is not that much healthy. Such restrictions are there regarding curd. And Ikshuvargam is products of sugarcane, like sugars and jaggeries. They are mentioned. The superiority and inferiority of such materials, the best variety, the least variety, something like that. Honey also is mentioned. Vegetable oils like sesame oil, mustard oil, castor oil, etc. are also described there. Alcoholic beverages, different materials used for fermentation. You can make beverages from different materials, plant products, animal products and all. Even sugar you can use for making beverages. Beer, toddy, wine, arista, sugar-based beverages, etc. are mentioned for their qualities and effects in the body. Ascetic fermented products called shuktam. Shuktam is the term for ascetic fermentation. So such products like vinegar, etc. are also mentioned. And restrictions and regulations on alcohol intake is very, very important. Uh, the seasonal regulations regarding alcohol intake, the quantity of alcohol to be consumed, and the difference in characteristics of alcohols, different sources of alcohol, etc. also are mentioned there. And that is the content of um, Dravadravya Vijnaniyam or drinkables. Going into the details of each and every drinkable or each and every individual items is not that much feasible in this presentation. So if you need some more details about that, we will make discussions on particularly on such topics later. And regarding Annaswarupa Vijnaniyam, that is solid food materials, classification into various groups as we mentioned in the case of liquid materials, and even subclassifications of each group, description of each item, description of major medicine ingredients. Along with the solid food materials, at the end portion of this chapter, there are some descriptions about some medicine groups, or it is called a vargam, medicine groups like triphala. Triphala means three fruits, that is Haridagi, Vibhidagi and Amalagi. I will discuss it later. Which are a very important content of many medicines. Gooseberry is the Amalagi. Amalagi you can use as food and medicine. So the Triphala group is a specific group which is ingredient of many medicines. They as such, three fruits as such are a potent medicine for many diseases. So such small groups are mentioned in the later portion of the last portion of this chapter. And the classification of solid foods is made into these type of groups, like dhanya vargam goes with grains, and mamsa vargam with meats. Here one thing is there. Usually Ayurveda is claimed to be vegetarian in nature. Almost all the time we apply the vegetarianism concept to Ayurveda. It is not like that. Almost all the edible meat items are described. I think around 110 items are there, edible meat items, including all those things which we consume now. are enlisted with their properties, with their effects in the body, and even ill effects also after consuming in an excessive quantity. So meat, Mamsavargam is there, Shakavargam is vegetables, Phalavargam goes to fruits, Lavanavargam salts. Some cooked food materials also are mentioned called Kritanna Varga. Basic cooked materials like rice, gruel, different types of gruels, and rice water, something like that. Basic materials only. It's not a very complicated or extensive description of culinary practices are not there. But some basic preparations are mentioned here because these basic preparations are important while preparing medicated food items during treatment of diseases. For example, if you treat for prameham, you can prepare gruel with a medicine called Dasamulam. It's called a Dasamulam Peya. Dasamulam are 10 types of roots used as medicines in Ayurveda. So you can prepare Dasamulam Peya as a medicine in the treatment of diabetes. So in a way it is a medicine, otherwise it is a food. So these type of dietary practices are there. So we should know the basic preparations, which are the basic preparations, yavagu, peya, different type of gruels and all. So it is very important to know what are the basic food materials, prepared food materials. And at the end portion of this chapter, some drug ingredients, as I have already mentioned, that is some groups like Triphala, Trikadu, Chaturjadam, Panchakolam. Some specific group of medicines also are described with their ingredients, and altogether you can take this as the materia medica of Ayurveda in Ashtanga Hridayam. Almost all the items which are very popularly used as medicines in Ayurveda are described with their qualities there. We'll move on to a specific vargas or specific groups. Dhanyam is of two types, Shuka Dhanyam and Simbi Dhanyam. Shuka Dhanyam you can take as a cereals, that is, they have a husk with them, and rice varieties, wheat, barley, millets, etc. are taken as Shuka Dhanyam. And Simbi Dhanyam are called pulses, which are usually grown in shells. They have some shells covering them, and inside the shells there will be the seeds. They are called pulses: green gram, horse gram, black gram, gingerly seed, linseed, etc. So many things are there. These are some examples only. Sub varieties of all these things also are explained. So example, Trinadhanyam. So there are so many sub varieties for Trinadhanyam. There are many sub varieties for Simbi Dhanyam, Udgam. So some other varieties also are there. Just put for some example. So these are the main two groups of Dhanya Vargam. And Mamsa Vargam, there are 8 groups. It's a very extensive description regarding Mamsam. The animals from which we collect the meat are divided into 8 groups. Here it is 6 and here it is 2. And those 8 groups like Mrigam means medium-sized grazing animals, deer, rabbit, goat, etc. Vishkiram, birds and animals are the major categories. Which scratch earth for food materials are called Vishkiram. Birds which peck with the beak is called Pratudam. So there are some sort of classifications among the birds and animals by considering their other characteristics, their physical characteristics or their style of feeding, their area of dwelling, or in which area they are residing, they are present, something like that. So on various considerations, the animals are classified into 8 items, 8 classes. Animals living in burrows is called Vilesayam. Examples are there, frog, snake, etc. There 4 animals are there. Altogether 110 items are there. Each group number of items are mentioned here. And Prasaham means animals which extend their neck for food. There comes the cow, ass, camel, horse, etc. There is 28 animals are there. Apsaram means water birds, duck, crane, kingfisher, etc. which are um, related to, which are dwelling near the water uh, areas. Malsyam is another area which is in water itself. So different type 18 items of fishes also are mentioned. In another consideration, according to the geographical classification, these three groups, Mrigam, Vishkaram and Pratudam, are classified as Jangala Mamsam. Jangalam means the area which are less marshy or dry area. Jangala Mamsam is told to be the best variety of Mamsam in health aspect. Even it is advised for regular intake. So, Sadharana Mamsam is a mediocre or moderate healthy items. And whereas Anupa Mamsam are the Mamsa which are related to the availability of water. Either fishes are there, water birds are there. These Mamsas are told to be inferior in health effects. So we don't advise Anupa Mamsa for daily intake, but Jangala Mamsa is advised for daily intake. So these are the this covers the almost all the meat items or non-vegetarian items which is available now. Some of them are not practiced now because the meat of deer is not available now with some other reason, for some other reasons. Rabbit is available, goat is available, peacock is not available. So parrot is available, owl, pigeon. These all are available now. Frog is not that much used. Snake also is mentioned, but we are not using. Chinese people from China, they told to be use snakes. And even cow is mentioned. Cow is a sadharana mamsa. It is not advisable for daily use. Cow, beef items and cow, buffalo, etc. are not intended for, not for daily use. But they are advised for, you can take no doubt, they are having some health effects. Even they are having some negative effects if you consume in an excessive quantity or in a regular style. So almost all these things have their own health effects, either positive or negative. Even though some of them are regular, you can take in regular use, some others are prohibited for regular intake. So that only is the difference. But almost in that chapter, the biggest area of description goes for Mamsavarga, because each and every 110 items, each and every item is taken for, are described for their health effects, their gunas and doshas and all. Okay, then comes vegetables. Basically, they are classified into 5 groups. One is general vegetables like bitter gourd, snake gourd, etc. Vegetable fruits are there. They are different from fruits otherwise. These are vegetable fruits, ash gourd, different types of cucumber. They are vegetable fruits. Stem vegetables, kanda shagam, means cabbage, caltrop, etc. Leafy vegetables and spices and condiments called coriander, etc. are called spices and condiments. So these type of classifications are there regarding vegetables. There are almost around 60 items explained in the textbook, individual items. In Phalavargam or fruits, 22 items such as grapes, orange, banana, dates, etc. are mentioned. Some of them are not available now. Some of them are very difficult to identify. And some of the presently available fruits are not mentioned. Maybe, for example, papaya. Papaya is not mentioned in Ashtanga Hridayam because papaya came to India after 15th century only. So the best variety among fruits is mentioned to be the grapes. And regarding prepared food, rice water, gruel, fried grains, cooked rice, different types of soup, some specific preparations like resala, saktu, etc. are mentioned in that chapter. And medicines and salts, different groups of medicines, Trigadu, Triphala, Panchagola, etc. And salts like Saindhavam, Samudra Lavanam, that is our common salt. Saindhavam is a peculiar type of salt which is more healthier than the use of common salt. Such details are there. This is the content for Annaswarupa Vijnaniyam, or the eatable food items in that chapter. Now we will move on to the next area, that is Anna Samrakshaniyam. Anna Samrakshaniyam is regarding the safety of food or food toxicity or toxins present in food, safe and unsafe practices of food, how to keep the food without adulteration, without toxicity, the measures or the testing, food testing also, food you can call it as food inspection, the methods of food inspection, complications of use of unsafe food, and the treatment. All those things are discussed in this chapter. And food toxicity, in the beginning of the chapter, it's mentioned that Vaidya should be posted at royal courts as food inspectors. So the importance of food inspectors, it's mentioned for the maintenance of health of the king. But the concept of food inspectors were there at that time also. And the food testing by these inspectors should ensure the quality of food or the safety of the food through testing their appearance, by organoleptic appearance, by seeing the food, by tasting it, and by the through the smell, through the softness, touch, through these organs, organoleptics, through sense organs, they have to assure. And it can be tested by feeding animals. You can give the food materials to birds and animals, and you can ensure whether it is safe or not by observing the behavior of birds and animals in that way. And the symptomatology of ingested poisonous food items are explained, even starting from if the food is poisonous, some symptoms will be there present in your hands, in your arms or fingers while taking the food. In the mouth there will be some symptoms. Afterwards, if you consume it, if you swallow it, some symptoms will be there in the stomach. And even during digestion, the intensive stage of digestion, there will be some other symptoms. So there are many types of symptoms through which you can identify that the food was toxic or impure. So there are some local symptomatology and systemic symptomatology. After absorption of the food, there are systemic effects of such impure foods. Such symptomatology are briefly described, and along with the treatment. Treatment means if you have already ingested the food, the treatment will be eliminating it, or by vomiting, or by purgation, or using some antidotes, using some medicines for that. Or even you can prepare your body not to be vulnerable for such toxicities. You can prepare, means by consuming some specific sort of drugs, you can prepare your body in a way that after consumption of an unsafe food, it will not create much problems in your body. So such preparatory preventive treatments also were discussed in this chapter. Next is a very important area which is regarding the Viruddha Ahara. Viruddha Ahara means some sort of incompatible food, which usually happens when the food materials are mutually contradictory in their characteristics. It's a very basic definition of Viruddha Ahara. When you prepare food items by adding food materials or ingredients which are mutually contradictory by some of their characteristics, such a preparation will become something like toxic to your body. So that is a very basic meaning of Viruddha Ahara. But Viruddha is a term which is having some broader meanings. Viruddha is not only about the ingredients, it's related to the processing of food, uh, or when the food materials are over processed, like overcooking or insufficient cooking, uh, or adding some chemicals during the processing, or adding some chemicals for preservation. Such things which are uh, becoming a part of the processing or preservation, etc., also come under the um, purview of the Viruddha. Or even there can be Viruddha. Viruddha, the term Viruddha is denotes that the food is not that much compatible to your body. So the Viruddhatvam, Viruddha means contradiction. Contradiction is with the food and your body. It can happen in many ways, including some seasonal changes. Or we usually say that the most safest use of food materials will be in the season in which they are available. The seasonal availability is very important. Local availability is very important. For example, food ingredients which are imported from outside will be comparatively bad to your body when compared to the locally available food. So those geographical things or locality issues will be there. Seasonal issues will be there. So the term Viruddha is a very bigger term which includes so many unhealthy practices related to food items and food processing, or even food consumption. For example, one Viruddha is there where you consume food items without laying attention on the food, or if you eat something while watching TV, becomes Viruddha. Tanmana, manasa means that is called manoviruddham or hridviruddham. So there are 18 types of Viruddha are there, but in Ashtanga Hridayam, such extensive descriptions are not there. In Ashtanga Hridayam, very basic description is there. Charaka Samhita, extensive description is there, like 18 types of Viruddha. Here, the basic meaning is some incompatibility between the ingredients added while preparing the food material or in the processing. Okay. The problem with the Viruddhahara is it provocates something in the body, but they doesn't expel them out or doesn't express them out. They will be creating some irritation in the body, but we don't know that such irritations are created in the body, or symptomatology will not be there. It will not be presented as such. Viruddham acts in the body but won't present itself. That means such food materials provoke some sort of immune responses in the body, but not potent enough to express the responses. So immune response will be initiated, but due to the triviality of the potency of this Viruddhahara, the immune responses are not that much expressed. So it will be initiated but not completed. So halfway immune responses will be there. Such minor provocations, because by intake of one Viruddhahara once in a while will not create that much problem, but it will initiate some sort of provocation, some irritations in the body. Those will not uh, those which are not properly expelled out, or those which are not properly expressed out. In such a situation, you don't know. For example, if you take directly a toxic substance, there will be some symptoms in your body. You know that the toxic substances are there in your body, but in Viruddha, in the case of Viruddha, it's not that much toxic in a particular dose, but by accumulation, repeating the same Viruddha for longer duration, it will create some cumulative toxicity in your body, and later on it will become uh, morbid. It will contribute to the morbidity factors, and it will cause some sort of diseases. So you cannot identify very well that Viruddhahara acts in your body. while seeing some diseases, you can infer that Viruddhahara was there. So there is no meaning in identifying, or there is no way to identify that Viruddhahara works in your body. It's not that much identifiable. You can call it as a minimum toxicity will be there, but when it accumulates, it will create for longer. If you take the same thing for longer duration, it will accumulate and create major health problems. There are many sorts of diseases enlisted for Viruddhahara complication as Viruddhahara complication, starting from infertility up to death. Almost all major diseases are told to be, for example, joint diseases, infertility, even insomnia and this type of schizophrenia or psychiatric diseases. Then liver diseases, ascites, kidney diseases. So many things are there through which the Viruddha Ahara affect your body. So Viruddhahara leads to cumulative toxicity through regular intake. That is the thing which becomes in which the Viruddhahara becomes a problem, because as such it is not identifiable, but by accumulation it contributes to the long pathological sequence, creating very much complications in your body. So some examples are there: fresh milk with honey, sprouted grain, fish with milk, honey and sprouted grains are becoming Viruddha. Sour fruits with milk. If you use some fruit salad with ice cream, milk items, if the salad contains some sour fruits, regularly if you take it, it will create problems in your body. Intake of milk after consuming some particular vegetables like radish. These are some examples. Almost 50-60 examples are there, which explains the incompatibility or contradictory nature of the food ingredients. Curd with chicken is another example. More than 50 examples are there. Some are irrelevant today, because it was intended for the use in the description in that time in which the Ashtanga Hridayam was written, but seem to be irrelevant today. Need of enlisting Viruddhahara in the contemporary diet. In the contemporary diet, there are many types of Viruddhahara by ingredients and by processing, or by preservation techniques, by cooking, this seasonal and locality issues and all. So there is any chance of Viruddhahara. So this is an area, I'm not going into details, this is an area very important, in which the most of the lifestyle diseases and chronic diseases are becoming a resultant of Viruddhahara if you take them regularly. And for preventing the effects of Viruddhahara, if at all you are consuming some sort of Viruddha, because it is very difficult to identify Viruddhahara in our day-to-day. Some of them are very much identifiable, but all those things are not identifiable, because we don't know how these ingredients interact with one another. So to avoid the ill effects of Viruddhahara, main three things are there: regular exercise, keeping digestion intact, and optimizing your immunity will be the three methods with which we can prevent the complications of Viruddhahara. And there is another area in this chapter that is called Satmyam. Satmyam is a practice, any practice that can be a dietary practice, that can be a lifestyle practice, anything, good or bad, becomes accustomed by regular use. For example, it's like smoking. Smoking, it's a bad habit, but it becomes accustomed by regular use. So such a practice is either good or bad. Usually we use the term Satmyam to good practices, but Satmyam is an accustomed practice. Can be food items, can be any other lifestyle practices. If you want to withdraw from unhealthy practices which has already accustomed, you need to be careful. Abrupt withdrawal and adoption not advisable. You have to withdraw from such unhealthy practices, and you have to be adopted with new healthy practices. Both those things, abrupt change in the routine will not be advisable. You have to do a gradual tapering on the bad habits. For example, alcoholism or smoking, etc. You have to gradually taper them and adopt the new pattern in a in that manner. It can be regular adoption of the new food habits. As much as you withdraw from that, in that the same frequency, you can add the new practice. Okay, it is mentioned that you can taper the old practice by quarter part or 1/16th part. For example, if you take 4 times smoking in a day, you have to cut 1 time in the next day, then 2 times, then 3 times, and by the fourth day you can totally withdraw from that, or 1/16th part. So quarter part or 1/16th part you can withdraw from the previous activity, and corresponding corresponding corrections will be made to adopt new practices or new healthy practices. So that is the concept of satmyam. Whatever thing you become satmyam, you should not abstain from that practice all on a sudden. You have to taper it to be converted to the new practices. That is a very important concept in Ayurveda about satmyam. Now we will move on to another area in this chapter, that is the concept of traya upastambham. Traya upastambham means 3 sub-pillars which supports proper health, like this. So food, the 3 things are Aharam, Nidra and Brahmacharyam. These 2 terms we are very familiar with, but this term Brahmacharyam is somewhat a controversial idea. There are many opinions regarding, or many descriptions regarding what is Brahmacharyam, what is importance of Brahmacharyam, related to the social codes and conduct, or related to the life stages, Brahmacharyam, Garhasthyam, Vanaprastham, Sannyasam, etc. So 4 stages of a human life. Such things are there. I'm not going into the philosophical descriptions or other dimensions. As far as the content of Ashtanga Hridayam is concerned, Brahmacharyam is somewhat related to the healthy sexual practice, sex practices, or healthy sexuality in a minimum sense of meaning. Here, I limit the meaning of celibacy or Brahmacharyam into the healthy sexuality of a person. So these 3 things together make the health, the proper maintenance of a health. Regarding Nidra or sleep, it's very well known that health, nourishment, immunity, virility, proper knowledge and quality of life, all those things are largely depending on proper sleep. It should be conditioned properly as far as human beings are concerned. Night is the original time or normal time for sleep. So avoid night alertness. That is called Ratri Jagaranam. Ratri Jagaranam means night alertness, and Divasupnam, day sleep. Those 2 things are faulty practice regarding sleep. And the complications and management of sleeplessness and excessive sleep, etc., are detailed here. That even the treatment of such practices also, if you have the practice of Nisha Jagaranam, or if you adopt the practice of Divasupnam, there can be some countermeasures for nullifying the bad effects of such practices. So all those things are explained in the context of Nidra. And regarding Brahmacharyam, Aharam already we have explained. Regarding Brahmacharyam, I am not going into such details now. And next is a chapter regarding quantity of food. Matra Asitiyam. Matra means quantity. Asitam means food. Quantity of food is always eat optimum quantity of it, because the digestive fire is maintained according to the quantity of food. That is the primary. Matrashi sarvagalam syada. Matrahi agne pravartakaha. The dose of food determines how much intact your digestive power will be. Okay, quantity is decided according to the heaviness, lightness of food, gurutvam and laghutvam. If the food is very heavy, you have to make a control on the quantity, and if it is light, you can have some more quantity on that. Heavy types of food should not exceed half the quantity of satiety. You are feeling satiety after taking food. If it is a guru, you have to make it controlled up to the half the quantity by which you feel satiety. Even though it is laghu, it should not cause over satiety. You can have some relaxation in the case of laghu, but it should not become over. It should not cause over satiety. So that is the criteria for fixing the quantity of food. Fill half of the stomach with solid food, 1/4 with liquid, and the fourth quarter should be left empty for providing proper movement of the food. This is the general rule regarding how much quantity you can take. If you have a proper digestive capacity, the solid food can fill up to the half of the stomach, and the other half quarter will be with the drinkables, and 1/4 part should be made empty for proper movement and other physiological activities. So that is the guideline. Complications of improper quantity is explained in this chapter. Insufficient quantity, starvation, cause undernutrition, and excess quantity cause complications due to quantity causes complications due to vitiation of all doshas. So atimatra aharam, or excessive quantity, leads to vitiation of all doshas in the body, and some main complications also were enlisted there. One is Vishuchika. Vishuchika is by symptoms it resembles, it is comparable with the cholera. And alasagam is another term which is almost a botulism, and amavisham is the food toxicity. All these things happens due to some improper dietary practices. And regarding this cholera, botulism, etc., during those period, they were not capable to conceive the presence of some microorganism. The concept of microorganisms as such was not that much developed at that period. So symptomatically, you can compare Vishujika with cholera, but you cannot correlate the presence of Vibrio cholerae in this situation. But they observed that intake of food is the cause for cholera and botulism and food toxicity and all. So that is the important point. By symptomatology, Vishuchika is comparable with the cholera and Alasaga is comparable with the botulism. Three types of ajirna. Ajirna means indigestion. Indigestion means the things are not, even though you consume optimum quantity, the things are not properly digested in your body. So that is called ajirna. Ajirna can be of three types according to some sort of symptoms. For example, if an indigestion is there along with the heaviness, swelling on the face and nausea, usually you see the complaint of nausea while indigestion is there. Such a thing will be kaphajirnam, means these type of symptoms are contributed by kapham. Nausea is from the upper part, that means kapham. And Paitika ajirna, the symptoms will be thirst, heartburn and acid belching. It is vidagdham. And in Vatika ajirnam, ajirna caused by Vata, pain will be the most important symptom, constipation and flatulence. So these three types of presentations are regularly seen in patients who have indigestion. Somebody of them will be having nausea as the major symptom. Some others will be having acid belching as major symptom, and pain will be there in some others. So according to these symptoms, you can classify them into kaphajirnam, paitigajirnam and vatigajirnam, because this classification is very important while designing the treatment, because vatam, pittam and kapham, they are having different treatments, even though the basic thing is ajirna. So that is the doshic classification of diseases. This is Not the case with Ajirna only. In any disease, these type of classifications will be there according to the difference in symptoms, whether it belongs to Kapham, whether it belongs to Pittam or Vadam. So treatment will focus on which dosha is involved there. Apart from the general treatment will be there. It should be tailor made to suit the involvement of which dosha is more involved in the pathogenesis. This is a very simple example to explain how the involvement of dosha makes difference in the presentation, and that is very important. Doshic assessment is very important because the treatment will be designed according to the dosha which is involved to present such situations. Okay, these type of things will be discussed in Nidana Sthanam. How the diseases are different, the same disease different according to the involvement of different doshas. Presentations will be different. Treatment also will be having some sort of difference considering the involvement of doshas. Okay. Other causes for indigestion will be improper food processing, as we already mentioned in the case of Viruddham, overcooking, insufficient cooking. Even Viruddham itself is a cause for indigestion. Unhygienic food processing, food intake when the person is under stress fear. This factor is very important because indigestion is not only a physical phenomenon. It is contributed by stress, or a person who is under stress, fear and anxiety, if you consume an optimum quantity of food itself will create some sort of indigestion. So if a person is constantly under stress, the management of that stress should not be confined to some psychological parameters only. It should consider some physical parameters, which by considering the involvement of indigestion in such situations. There are three types of faulty diet practices called ahara dosham, that is mixing desirable and undesirable food items, which we have already mentioned in the case of Viruddham. So some persons will be having allergy to some food items, or all the food items are not equally compatible with all the types of personalities. So if you mix food ingredients which are desirable to a person with some undesirable, for example, if somebody is having lactose intolerance, preparing a food item by adding milk will be samasanam, because they use some items which is desirable and the milk is not desirable. So if you prepare a payasam with or any item, fruit salad with these milk items, this will create problem. That is called a samasana. Intake of food frequently before digesting the previous food is called adhyasana. It is a frequent eating without considering whether the previous food is digested or not. So that such a practice called adhyasanam. Untimely food, either excessive or less, is called vishamasana. So these are three types of ahara dosham which you have to be abstain from. Some other types of indigestion or this ajirna or digestion problems also are there, called vilambika, which is latent indigestion. There will not be any prominent symptoms for that. It will be hiding behind. It will be latent, but on a continuous intake, it will create problems. Residual indigestion, even though some ajirna or indigestion has been treated, some of them will be left back, or some residues will be there. That will eventually create some problems. That is called resasesha ajirnam. Such types of indigestions also will be there. Major principles of treatment in ajirna: never use painkillers to manage pain. Sometimes, if at all there are pain in stomach or in intestine, the use of painkillers, medicines to alleviate pain, is totally contraindicated in ajirna, because if you take such medicines in a larger dose, that itself will cause ajirna, because already ajirna is there. If you take frequently such medicines, that itself will create ajirna or aggravate ajirna. avoid using medicines to stop the flow. If in the case of ajirna or this type of digestive problems, if there are some diarrhea or some vomiting tendencies are there, you don't use, primarily you don't use medicines for blocking such impulses, some eliminations, let them go. Okay, that is the primary principle. If it is if the discharge of, or if the diarrhea is out of control, you can, at that time you can use some sort of medicines, but primarily the rule is don't block such eliminations, you let them go, because it's already a cleansing thing. Okay, so there is no need to block them. According to the severity of presentation, three methods are adopted. Slight vitiation of dosha, fasting is enough. That is called lankana. If it is a moderate vitiation, fasting along with the medications for digestive treatment, for some medications to digest them, if it is in a moderate vitiation. In excessive vitiation of dosha, shodhana itself, if it is accumulated in the stomach, if it is not eliminated properly, you can eliminate them by using some shodhana therapy or emetics or purgatives. If it is makes bigger problems by accumulating in the intestine and all, you need to eliminate them using some shodhana drugs. So that is these are the principles, general guidelines on treatment, but according to situation you can make some alterations in these guidelines. Ideal dietary practices. So timely intake of food, applying mind, it's very important, as I have already mentioned. Food which is ushna, snigdha and laghu are most suitable for the body. Food containing all tastes adequately with the predominance of madhuram. Almost the major quantity of food we intake will be having madhura rasam, glucose. Glucose will be added more. But all the tastes should be sufficiently added. Because if you make a food material containing all the tastes, including madhura, amlam, lavanam, tiktam, kadu and kashayam, it comes that all the types of food materials will be added in them. Okay. If you ensure the presence of all the tastes in the food material, that means all the types of food, like these grains will be there, fruits will be there, vegetables will be there. If you ensure the presence of all the tastes, that means all the food groups will be included in food. That is the importance of including all the tastes in food materials. Neither too fast nor too slow. You should not take food in a fast manner or slow manner. It should be after taking bath. Feeding should be after taking bath, after reaching proper appetite, as we have already mentioned. Avoid disturbance. It should be a calm place. Taking in the midst of much disturbance is not a good practice. Keep the hygiene. Avoid talking during intake. Don't abuse food items, and have a company of beloved persons while eating. This is very important, because this makes your mind calm. There is no stress. So mental faculty also should be calm at the time of dietary intake. Some food items, as I have already mentioned, some food items are desirable for a regular, daily you can use some food items for regular use, like grains like rice, wheat, shastika rice. Shastika is a type of rice. Jangala Desha, Jangala Mamsa means meat from Jangala. We have already classified the groups of Mamsa into three, that is Jangala, Manugam and Sadharan. So Jangala Mamsam is advised for daily use. Vegetables like Jeevanti, Sunishan Naga, etc. Many lists are there. Fruits like gooseberry, grapes, pomegranate, etc. Milk and ghee in a proper quantity. Pure rainwater. Honey with and Sainthava salt. It's not a with honey, Sainthava salt. Triphala with honey is a, if you take daily Triphala with honey, it's a good for eyesight. So these type of materials you can take daily. Some other food items which are forbidden for regular use. That means these are not the food items forbidden forever. You can take them once in a while, or you have to avoid them the use of these type of food materials daily. You can take once in 3 days, once in 1 week, or something like that. Daily intake is not that much desirable. That is the only sense of forbidden. So such items are curd varieties like Kelada Dati Guja. I have already mentioned that curd you can take daily but with some restrictions. For example, best example is curd is not desirable along with salt. Curd is desirable along with sweet or along with the sugar, like lassi. Or if you use gooseberry along with the curd, it will be a good practice. So it does not mean curd should be avoided for intake, but it means that if you add some additives like sugar or gooseberry or even this green gram soup, some materials are mentioned in textbooks. So you have to add or you have to consume curd along with such items. It will not make much problems. Using curd daily with the salt is not a good practice. Daily intake of curd is to be is a forbidden in a regular manner. Alkaline preparations, uncooked radish, meat of emaciated animals, unhealthy, or emaciated animal means the animals which are not that much fit or physically healthy. So those things should be avoided. Dried or preserved meat like pork, beef, fish, etc. This is very much important because nowadays it is available. The fish and beef or pork, they are available after preservation, after drying. It's not fresh. So fresh meat is to be consumed. It's better to avoid preserved meat or stale meat. Grains like black gram, beans, sprouted grains, etc. are forbidden for regular use. You can use sprouted grains as a part of treatment. It's not that much. It's not a regular use. Treatment means you once in a day or in a small quantity you use. It's not a major food item in the diet. Sprouted grains. So sprouted grains, it's a controversy because sprouted grains is told to be a forbidden diet for daily intake in Ayurveda. That means in a small quantity, once in a while or once in 2 or 3 days, you can use sprouted grains. But the 3 times regularly, if you take sprouted grains, that is not a good practice. Is the advice of Ayurveda. Tuberous roots, regular intake is that not that much good. Leafy vegetables which are not fresh, or it's called a Sushka Shagam. Sushka Shagam means vegetables which are not fresh. So these type of items are not advisable for regular use. There is another concept called Anupanam. Anupanam is a liquid taken after food. So you use half the part of the stomach should be filled with the solid food. So you have to take a liquid. So this liquid is designed according to the characteristic of food one takes. Should be in such a way that it rectifies the ill effects of food but not incompatible for the body. It should be compatible with body, but it should rectify, it should have some opposite characteristics of the major food. So the negative effects of that food will be rectified. In such a way we have to design Anupanam. It helps in bringing out proper breakdown, softening, digestion and diffusion of food so that it brings out vitality and satiety. Some examples are there. Pure cold water should be used for wheat, barley, honey, liquor and curd. And lukewarm water for ground rice items. Honey water for obese persons and meat soup for emaciated persons. So these are some examples for Anupana. And finally, the ideal time for food intake. When should you take food? After proper evacuation of excreta. At least once you have to pass urine after taking the previous diet. That is one criteria. Second one is while feeling calmness to mind. When you are in a tense or stress, it's better to avoid food. Doshas are properly functioning. You don't feel anything unhealthy in your body. Pure belching, it is a very important marker of whether the previous food is digested or not. You can take some quantity of water and create a belching. You can create a belching. while the belching is coming out or the air is coming out, if there is no uh, smell or taste of the previous food, it is called a Shuddhodgaram. Shuddhodgaram means pure belching. Pure belching is an indicator that your stomach is free now. Your stomach, there is no food materials, previous food materials present in your stomach. If there is some smell of the previous food in belching while taking this gas out, that is not a good indicator for taking uh, the next meal. Okay, beginning of appetite, proper movement of vada. There is nothing, no block is there. Feeling lightness of the body. All these are the symptoms by which you can decide that I can take food or we can take food. So that is the ideal time for food intake. It's called Ahara Kalam. Ahara Kalam is the ideal time for food intake. So this is the description given in this whole chapter. So I think almost all the aspects of food and dietary practices are discussed in these 4 chapters. Regarding food ingredients, regarding the digestive process or digestive malfunctions and all, their treatment, quantity of food and time of food, processing are some incompatible aspects of food items. All the things regarding the dietary practices, even preparation of the cooked food itself. So all these things are comprehensively discussed in these 4 chapters. I didn't go for the ultra details of those things because it will take days. This is only 1 hour presentation. It will take days to complete if I go for each and every details of those things. If you want more details about individual areas in this, for example, Viruddhahara is a big area of worth discussion. So if you want such discussions, we will go for such discussions on a later time. So by this, I conclude the part of 6th part of my presentation and the second part of Swastavrita. So with this presentation and the previous presentation, we completed the Swastavrita aspect of Ayurveda. Now we will moving on to some important conceptual parts of Ayurveda or principles of Ayurveda as an extension to which were explained in Ayush Kamiyam. In Ayush Kamiyam, most of the principles were introduced. But now from the next class, we move on to the details of such principles. The next chapter onwards up to the 15th, from 9th chapter up to the 15th chapter. This is very important regarding the basic principles of drug action and regarding the details of Tridosham, Dhatu, Malam and Shariram and the treatment aspects, basic principles of treatment. All those things are discussed in the 9th chapter up to 15th chapter. So I think those chapters should be dealt in a somewhat better way than what we did in the last 2 classes. Okay, we will be with the 9th and 10th chapters in the next session. And by that, I conclude this session. Thank you.